a bit stronger than we realize, both mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really see that until you really test it.
Yeah, the intimacy part, because of course this should have been number one, but I don't know why.
Yeah, of course you've got.
Yeah,
so it's very difficult then, because then the person has all that stress of the logistics.
It's being a single parent.
It's basically, it's like being a single parent.
Single parenting.
You're basically single
and
parent.
And it's the most scary thing, because I've been once a single mom, and it's just like the hardest thing to be when you know that you actually have a present partner, and they can't be present at that time. They're kind of present but not present at the same time.
This is kind of weird.
And you always have also to wait until evening to talk to them, and if you talk to them during the day, sometimes they have to hang up and tell you, you know what, I have to go, we'll talk later, and stuff like that. And also it's very hard for them to capture events or the happenings in the real time, because sometimes when you call, they're kind of like just in their own world of rescue and everything, and you're just like, I wanted to tell you, and they'll be like, can we talk about this later on? And I'm just like, you know what? So it kind of makes the other person miss on other things that you are. And you know, women, we are so fussy. Like, if you don't join me in that, I don't know what you're doing. Anyway. Another thing I think that was really tough for us was the intimacy part, because of course this should have been number one, but I don't know why.
Of course, you've got no intimacy. I mean, it's just
exactly.
There's that time you spend directly with the person. It doesn't have. It doesn't have to be anything hot and heavy. You can just that spending, going for a walk together, just all those simple things that.
Dancing together.
All the simple things that are important for to keep a relationship going. So they're basically you try and sort of squeeze in as much as that is possible on the phone. But even over time, sometimes you just get like, I notice how you just notice after a while how it's just not enough. It becomes sometimes, like for me, it would become sort of almost disappointing or sad to even try, because I sort of felt the gap, and then you just feel it makes you actually then it just makes you feel even worse, and just you don't, of course you want to speak to the other person, but you dread that feeling of the inadequacy of the moment. I mean, all of a sudden you get a thought in your head, you're feeling warm towards the other, whatever it is. That's true, and you call, or vice versa, and then you realize, she finds that it's 12 a.m. and I'm still working on a proposal, and I'm just like, look, I'm sorry. Or something like that, all these crazy things that happen.
And there's so many conversations sometimes we did not get to talk about. Your relationship can actually take two ways. You can start drifting apart.
I mean, I think the bit about the coronavirus thing comes in. I mean, anybody who's been stuck in the country because they couldn't travel because of their work, couldn't travel as often as, for the R&R or the leave to come and see their families. I mean, this is another,
just even health issues
or whatever. This is the bit. The drifting apart is a critical point. I mean, you really have to be careful if you notice a sense of drift, you need to really then grab the reins and say, whoa. And I think have an honest talk with your partner, your spouse, whatever, and say, look, it's a kind of mental. I mean, it's a sort of, it's fatigue basically. It's like an emotional, mental fatigue that starts setting in. I think, because then it's a combination of things, the missing someone plus the act of missing someone, if that makes sense, and it sort of wears you down basically, and that's the point at which you need to really start looking at the situation. That's when we talked about like having a plan for, this is where it comes into having a plan for long distance relationships, because you really, the only way to really get through this is not
planning it is really hard.
But the point is that where you have to be honest about this kind of situation is that it cannot go on forever, because it will not work. That's the other point to make. It's a finite timeline. So you need to be clear with your partner. If there's an end date, I mean, that's the best thing, and that then both sides can work towards that.
Figure out how to work it for both of you, then actually you can work it through and make sure just that you can both hold on to each other and hope for each other's
because you have to be self-aware, because people naturally start questioning, is this how my entire life is going to be? I'm going to miss the best part of my years with this situation. So
because actually in our case, for me, I think like it kind of feels like I missed a lot, because there are places that I would have wanted to be with him when we're in Nairobi, there are things I would have wanted to do with him in the past, but I wasn't able to do it with him because he wasn't there. So most of the time I'd end up postponing the event, and then he would come back and I'll be hoping for this big like R&R period, which is rest and recuperation, and then you come and then you notice that the R&R is only like 1 week.
The worst part of it too is that many often I'd come back and I would be so tired.
The time they're recovered, they're actually fucking to leave the next
You gotta go
time.
then. I mean, the children want to see you all the time, everybody wants to see you, and you're literally
for me, I
destroyed. So that's not, again, it's not sustainable, because then the leave and R&R periods don't, the family naturally has
there was never enough time for him to be.
I was even ill once, so it's, where's your R&R?
And your employers are never like favorable to, I think you just need a little more time at home and stuff, so because it affects the salary, income and everything else. But it can surely go the other way where you drift apart, but if you work on it, like have a strategy on it, then you can actually still maintain being together. Any other thing you think about? So I've always had like both sides communication about this long distance relationship, and when you tell you the way without communication, then the other partner is always tends to get out of the relationship to seek consolence.
Well, that's what happens. People then have, start seeing other people, if they're married or not.
Before you think of emergency sex and stuff like that, I think it's just nice to try and have this video as your pocket guide to having a humanitarian aid or a long distance relationship, or just walking away from home, right? Yeah. And always, I think if you find someone that you really love, you can always try and work towards waiting on them, or try to just just try and bear the situation for a
you have to be you have to be honest about, like, if you're gonna stay with this person who's away, then you need to say, you need to be honest about what's required to do it. So because also it's not just about reassuring the person who's away that you're going to be back there. It's also about yourself, because you have to know that you can do it. And I'd say always that, just as a positive reference, you're always generally, as human beings, we're always a bit stronger than we realize, both mentally and physically. But you don't really see that until you're really tested. So don't be.
You can never know your capacity.
Don't necessarily be afraid of being tested. But if there's a good reason to be tested, if you know that it's worth pulling, doing the hard work to remain with this person, then it's worth it. But again, I would say the key thing is always to be honest about the situation. And don't have any wishful thinking. If you see your partner getting a bit too, we've heard of cases where the one partner says to the other, look, if you do one more of these missions, then that's it. So it's good to be direct and communicate. Don't say, oh well, let's just let them go again, and then you have the affair, right? You can save your relationship by saying, wait, hang on, we need to make a change. Is that the person who's going away, obviously they have a career. And so it's always easier to do the thing you've always been doing, because that's what employers want you for. So it's, the person itself, in my own case, I thought about it as well, that, you have to be brave enough to say, okay, actually I'm going to change my career because, I have to now think about my family. So it's, these are the kind of dynamics involved. So, and you have to be really, honest.
And I think they're not easy choices to make, as you can hear. But I think it calls for understanding on both sides, the person going and the person staying at home as well. Because even them leaving the door every time and bidding everyone bye is never easy. And the person staying also always being the person to say bye-byes is never also easy as well. So I think it calls for understanding on both parties as to why they have to go and why you have to stay, and why you have to hold your part and why they have to hold their part. It's like dividing responsibilities, where you have to go and fend, and I have to try and somehow work on how to raise the kids.
The children is also critical, because they're also in the mix. But actually, there's one point that comes up now and then. You'll hear people say, for example, in all these sectors where somebody is away or something like that, you always hear someone say, well, only a certain type of person does this work.
Yeah.
Well, you can say that up to a point, but the majority of people, I think, in the world generally gravitate towards having either a family or at least a relationship.
Yeah.
So the idea that only a certain type of person can do this work, there may be, I mean, I've met some of them, it's a very small group, like of people who can endure this sort of situation forever, but they don't have normal relationships. They're not married. They go through relationships one after the other. I mean, you know, relatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
And so, but they've, you know, for them, maybe they've made peace with that reality. They said, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to do it this way, and that's my life. You know, they don't want children. It's very simple then.
But that is why you end up seeing many people who kind of tend to grow older and then catch up with family life later on in their life.
Well, it can happen too. They don't always change their mind.
The job it requires a lot from a person.
Yeah, but they also think they want to do it. That's the other point.
This also kind of changed the whole, I would say, African narrative or post-narrative of if I go and do a job then, or for example, humanitarian aid work in this case, they think that you tend to have a lot of money. It kind of changes the whole dynamics because you kind of tend to figure out, is it money or is it the work or the family? I think there's also that point to consider because what you have to lose or what you have to endure during this time is much more, which is where I also say employers need to be more lenient. I think for our kids, it has always been that way. Every time daddy has to leave home, they're always really, really sad and you can see it really coming, and then it takes a long time for them to adjust, and this drains from it. The change comes from eating to being happy to just everything. The mood always changes to the negative side when their father is always leaving to after he leaves, and then it takes a long time for you as a parent to stay back home to bring that normalcy back and just to try and be there for them, present emotionally and everything for them until they are okay. And then when they're okay, then this other person is coming back. So it's kind of like they're never in a stable mental or emotional health, you know, because it's kind of like you always try and recover from it and then it happens again, and then you get happy and then you get disappointed, and it's just a circle of all that never ends. And I think it gets really tough and really hard. Children always don't understand why one person have to be away as much as you tend to remind them why, but I think it comes with age that they get the understanding, but to some extent somehow they still don't. Or like most of all, even before the two of you, I think it should be the children, if you're not children, are involved in the same. Yeah,
I mean that's why I said this is like there's a finite timeline to this thing. Something's going to give something will give somewhere. It just depends on what. It just depends on what, based on how you approach the whole process.
Yeah.
So, and you just need to be very self-aware of that. If you just go into this in a kind of careless way, you're not going to end up with a good result.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why I think there's a song, it reminds me of the song, I think when you're finishing this, because I can see we're really taking too long already, but it reminds me of Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, I got to know when to hold on, when to.
Yeah, when to walk away.
Walk away, when to run.
So basically, just be careful to make sure that you know Kenny Rogers must be your best friend at this time. May his soul rest in peace. But that's the only song that I always kept on singing in my mind, and something that just helped me through this time. Because somehow I knew where I wanted to hold on, and he somehow found a way to know a way of why he needed to kind of just change and come home and try and figure things out afresh from home and stuff like that. So I think we leave you there.
Yes,
and I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to know more about long distance relationships, let us know, and we'll come here really not as professionals, but just tell you what we have dealt with and how we have managed to handle everything. And yes, there has been struggles along the way, like so many of them. You can't imagine. There are many days that tissues were soaked. But yeah, we still pulled it through. So, peace, and we love you so much.
See you later.
Bye-bye, guys. See you.